Hi there, strikers. There's something uniquely disturbing about people vanishing into thin air. Read about these incredibly strange, unsolved cases. Although these disappearances span centuries, locations, age ranges, and circumstances, there's one common thread shared between them: a lack of closure. There are theories, speculations, and investigations, but never a decisive answer. On our incoming episode, I'm going to feature some of the cases of mysterious disappearances, of some missing that just disappear without any trace.
Covered a lot of missing persons cases on this channel, both solved and unsolved, with the exception of Marvin Clark, who I talked about a few months ago. This might be the oldest one I've ever covered. Let's talk about Mary Agnes Maroney, who hasn't been publicly seen or heard from in almost a century. Mary Agnes Maroney was born on May 9, 1928, to parents Michael and Catherine Maroney. She was soon joined by at least one younger sister, though some sources said she had two. In 1930, 2-year-old Mary Agnes lived with her family in Chicago, Illinois, but the family wasn't doing too well. Michael Maroney had just lost his job a few months earlier, as I imagine was the case with many people during the Depression, and Catherine was pregnant again. So he put an ad in the newspaper asking for help. Most sources said he was looking for material things, but one said he was asking for a job. On May 14th of that year, a woman showed up at their door. She said her name was Julia Otis, and she'd been sent by a social worker named Mrs. Henderson. Julia bought things for them like groceries and baby clothes. She also offered to take Mary Agnes to California, but her parents didn't let her go. The next day, Julia showed up with even more things for the family. She offered to take Mary Agnes clothes shopping, and her parents agreed. They left the house and didn't come back. The next day, the Maroneys received a letter from Julia, saying she'd taken Mary to California and would bring her back in a couple of months. Another source said part of the letter read, "Mary Agnes is on the way to California. You can spare her for 2 months." Regardless of exactly what the letter said, the Maroneys never heard from Julia Otis again. They contacted the police the day they received the letter. About 2 weeks later, the Maroneys received another letter, this one from a woman named Alicia Henderson. One source said she was Julia Otis's aunt, another said her cousin. By the way, she told the family that Julia had lost her husband and child a year earlier, and that she was love-hungry, so she'd taken Mary Agnes. But when police examined the letters, one from Julia Otis, another from Alicia Henderson, they thought the handwriting looked very similar. Because of this, they were afraid Mary Agnes had been killed, presumably by her parents, though it's never been stated explicitly. Michael and Catherine were actually arrested on May 20th when police couldn't find any trace of Julia Otis, but were let go after an hour. Not much else happened in the case for over 20 years. Then, in early 1952, a report ran in the Oakland Tribune in California about the case that included Mary Agnes's picture. A local mechanic named Everett McClelland saw the report and thought the picture looked a lot like his wife, Mary McClelland. 24-year-old Mary McClelland knew she was adopted. Her mother said she had witnessed her birth and adopted her in November 1927, before Mary Agnes Maroney was even born. Her doctor backed her up, saying he'd arranged the adoption in 1927. Mary McClelland also didn't have a scar on her abdomen that Mary Agnes should have had, but other sources say McClelland had been adopted after Mary Agnes disappeared. Anthropologist Dr. Bertram S. Krause examined McClelland's teeth and said there was a match, and when McClelland's fingerprints and blood type were tested, they were found to be similar to the Maroney family, indicating she could be a member. In September 1952, Mary McClelland met up with the Maroney family. Catherine Maroney was skeptical from the start that this was her missing daughter, but they agreed to try and work on a relationship. In September 1952, Mary McClelland met up with the Maroney family. Catherine Maroney was skeptical from the start that this was her missing daughter, but they agreed to try and work on a relationship. DNA testing would later prove that Mary McClelland was not Mary Agnes Maroney. She died in 2005. According to a post on an Ancestry.co message board that appears to be started by McClelland's granddaughter, this DNA test happened in 2009. So despite the early police speculation that Mary Agnes's parents were involved in her disappearance, most people I've come across online discussing this case believe she was kidnapped and raised by someone, probably Julia Otis. The only real question is, Where are they now? Unsurprisingly, there has been speculation that Julia Otis was a false name. It would make sense. After all, why would you use your real name in the process of committing a crime? And if Julia changed her own name, she almost certainly changed Mary Agnes's as well. A few people on web sleuths have done some digging and think they may have found either Mary Agnes or Julia. But of course, nothing is confirmed. One interesting thing I want to point out that I haven't seen anyone else discuss is the first letter the Maronis received. Assuming it really was from this Julia Otis, I think it's interesting that they reportedly received it the day after Mary Agnes was last seen. Even today, mail takes several days to get to its intended destination, and I can't imagine it being much better in 1930. I think the fact that it arrived so soon after Mary Agnes's disappearance could be evidence that the whole thing was premeditated. Julia Otis, whoever she really was, might have seen Michael Maroney's ad in the paper and, unfortunately, decided to take advantage of their situation. Mary Agnes Maroney was 2 years old when she disappeared from her home in Chicago, Illinois on May 15, 1930. Her case is classified as a non-family abduction. Mary Agnes is a white female with blonde hair and blue eyes, and was 3 feet tall and 20 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She has a scar on her abdomen and a strawberry birthmark on her face. She is left-handed. If she were alive today, she would be 92 years old. Mary Agnes was reportedly last seen with a woman who went by Julia Otis. She was described as being in her early 20s, well-dressed and with protruding teeth. This case was a bit difficult to research because it's so old. A lot of information was either never online or used to be and has since been taken down. There were also a lot of contradictory details, so I did the best I could to be accurate. The good news is that I came across a lot of people online who claim to be relatives of Mary Agnes and want to find out what happened to her. So with all these people looking, I think there's a good chance she will be found. And that's for our today's featured story. Until next time, thank you for watching. Strikers.